On Mother's Day, I received a card, and my daughter insisted that I read it aloud. The card stated, "Roses are red, violets are blue. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here." Laughter erupted around me. My name is Grace. I am 74 years old, and that moment marked the most humiliating experience of my life. It was a sunny Sunday morning when I arrived at my daughter Danielle's house, dressed in my favorite green dress, which always made me feel elegant. I had brought fresh flowers and sweet treats for my grandchildren. "Grandma Grace," the youngest exclaimed, rushing toward me. Their hugs filled my heart with joy, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. However, Michael, my son in law, greeted me with little more than a curt nod. Danielle emerged from the kitchen with a smile that failed to reach her eyes. "Mom, we're so glad you could join us. We have a special surprise for you." I settled onto the sofa, surrounded by my family, while the grandchildren eagerly gathered at my feet. Danielle produced a pink card from her purse and handed it to me. "This is from all of us, Mom. Please read it aloud for everyone to hear." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope, revealing drawings of flowers made by the children. How sweet, I thought. I began to read in an enthusiastic voice, but my voice faltered as I encountered the next lines. "You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. Your time has passed. It's time for you to go. Signed, your family who can't stand you anymore." The silence that followed was deafening for what felt like an eternity. Then Michael erupted into laughter, a cruel, mocking sound. Danielle stifled a giggle, but I could see she was amused as well. Even the children, though not fully comprehending, began to giggle because the adults were. "Did you see your face, Mom?" Danielle exclaimed between laughs. "You should have seen yourself. Michael, did you capture that moment?" My heart shattered, and tears streamed down my wrinkled cheeks as the card slipped from my trembling hands to the floor. "It's just a joke, Mom," Danielle continued, her tone devoid of remorse. "Don't take it so seriously. You've always been so dramatic." Michael picked up the card from the floor. "Yeah, Grace, we were just having a bit of fun, but lately you've been a bit too present." He hesitated. "Perhaps you should consider other options." "Other options?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was coming to celebrate Mother's Day with you." "And you are, Mom." Michael interjected condescendingly. "But it's time to be realistic. You're not young anymore. You need special care, and we have our own lives." The grandchildren looked at me bewildered. The eldest, barely 8 years old, approached and took my hand. "Grandma, why are you crying?" Before I could respond, Danielle pulled him away. "Come here, sweetie. Grandma's fine. She's just being sentimental." I sat there, feeling more isolated than I had ever felt. On a day meant to celebrate my motherhood, my daughter had publicly humiliated me, turning me into the family's cruel joke. Slowly I rose, my legs shaking. "I should just go." "Okay, Mom," Danielle replied, not even standing to bid farewell. "We'll call you later." I walked to the door, clinging to the dignity I had left, but inside my world had shattered. That night in my empty house, I cried until there were no more tears, yet something within me shifted. The humiliation awakened a dormant strength. It was time for my family to learn the truth about who Grace truly was. The following day, I blocked all of them. But first, I needed to reflect on how I had arrived at such a painful juncture. I settled into my favorite armchair, the same one in which I had cradled Danielle 45 years ago, and let memories flow through my mind like a film. It all began when I was 29 years old. Danielle's father abandoned us when she was merely 3. One morning, he simply vanished, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "I can't do this life. I'm sorry." He didn't even say goodbye to his daughter. I vividly remember that night, holding Danielle as she wept for her father. "Daddy had to go far away, my love," I whispered, vowing that she would never lack for anything. I upheld that promise, working double shifts at the textile mill for 15 years. My hands bore calluses from sewing uniforms late into the night, and every extra cent I saved for Danielle's education. When she expressed a desire to study nursing at 17, I sold my mother's jewelry, the only valuable possession I had. But seeing my daughter's bright eyes as she spoke of her dreams made my decision effortless. "Mommy, are you sure?" she asked me that day. "Absolutely, my love. Your education is paramount." During her 5 years at university, I worked weekends cleaning offices, returning home with a sore back. Yet, witnessing Danielle studying at the dining room table made it all worthwhile. On her graduation day, I cried tears of pride as she exclaimed, "We did it, Mommy," embracing me tightly. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." Later, she met Michael. Initially, I liked him. He was polite, hardworking, and genuinely seemed to love her. When they married, I contributed half of the $12,000 for the wedding, having saved for years. "Mom, this is too much." Danielle protested when I presented the check. "Nonsense," I replied with a smile. "It's the most important day of your life. You deserve it." When they purchased their first home, I provided the $25,000 down payment. It was all I had saved, but witnessing their happiness in their new home filled me with satisfaction. Then the grandchildren arrived, two beautiful little ones who became the light of my life. When Danielle returned to work after her maternity leave, I became their free babysitter. Each day for 3 years, I walked 6 blocks to their home at 6 a.m., preparing breakfast, dressing them, taking them to the park, feeding them, bathing them, and reading stories. When Danielle returned from work, the house was clean and the children were content. "I don't know what we would do without you, Mom," Danielle would say during those days. "You're an angel." However, over time, something shifted. The expressions of gratitude diminished. My opinions regarding the children began to be perceived as interference. When I suggested that the youngest needed to see a pediatrician for his persistent cough, Michael retorted, "Grace, were the parents here?" The first time I was spoken to in that manner, I remained silent, questioning whether I had overstepped. Subtle comments began to surface. "Mom, you don't have the energy you once had for watching the kids." "Grace, I think you confused the kids' vitamins again. Perhaps you should rest more at home." Yet I continued to assist daily, pouring my heart into my contributions. 2 years ago, when Michael lost his job, I began providing them with $500 a month to prevent them from losing their home. "It's just temporary," they assured me, "just until Michael finds something better." He secured a new job 6 months later, yet they never asked me to cease the financial support. Instead, they continued to accept it as if it were their entitlement. When the children needed new computers for school, I spent $2,000 without being prompted. When Danielle's car broke down, I contributed $4,000 for repairs. When they desired to remodel the kitchen, I provided $8,000. Gradually, I became the silent benefactor, the one always available to resolve their financial issues, yet excluded from significant family decisions. A year ago, Danielle organized a family dinner for Michael's birthday. I learned of it by chance when one of my grandchildren mentioned the secret gathering. "Why wasn't I invited?" I inquired of Danielle over the phone. "Oh, Mom, it was a small gathering, just the four of us. We thought you would be bored." However, I saw photos on social media showing 20 attendees, including Michael's relatives whom I knew well. Everyone had been invited except me. That night, I wept in silence but reassured myself it must have been an oversight. Yet, oversights became routine. They forgot to call me on my birthday, canceled our lunch dates, and when I showed up unannounced, they seemed annoyed by my presence. The final straw came 3 months ago. While assisting with dinner at their house, I overheard Michael on the phone in the patio. "Yes, my mother-in-law lives alone. She's becoming quite dependent. No, she's not sick, but you know how they are at that age. Yes, we are considering options to move her to a suitable place." I froze behind the door, realizing my son-in-law was planning to dispose of me as if I were old furniture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I had devoted my life, my finances, and my love to this family, only to find myself viewed as an obstacle they wished to eliminate. Yet, they were unaware of a significant secret I had kept for decades. My mother had informed me of a family property in Nassau, Bahamas, which I inherited upon turning 70. It was a beachfront condo that had been rented out for years, with the income accumulating in an account I had never touched. Additionally, I had investments from my late Aunt Lucille, who had left everything to me: bonds, stocks, certificates of deposit, funds that had quietly grown while I lived modestly on my Social Security check. In total, I possessed nearly $400,000 that my family knew nothing about. They believed I was a poor elderly woman reliant on government assistance, unaware that I had been discreetly supporting their comfortable lives for years, not out of necessity, but out of love. However, after the humiliation of Mother's Day, something within me shifted irrevocably. It was time for them to learn Grace's true worth. That night, I reflected on the card's cruel words. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. As the tears dried on my cheeks, a strange transformation began. Sadness morphed into clarity and determination. For the first time in decades, I viewed my situation with complete honesty. I was not a burden. I was the one supporting them. I rose slowly and retrieved a wooden box from my dresser that I had not opened in months. Inside were all my important documents, bank statements, deeds, investment certificates. As I perused the papers, I calculated that over the past 5 years, I had given Danielle and Michael exactly $67,000. This sum included the down payment on their house, $25,000, the wedding, $12,000, monthly support for 2 years, $12,000, the children's computers, $2,000, the car repairs, $4,000, the kitchen remodel, $8,000, and hundreds of smaller expenses, totaling an additional $4,000. Meanwhile, I continued to reside in my modest home, wearing the same green dress on Sundays and walking to the grocery store to conserve gas. However, the most painful aspect was recalling how their treatment of me had deteriorated. I remembered my eldest grandson's birthday 6 months prior. I had arrived early to assist with decorations as always, but when I knocked on the door, Michael opened it with visible annoyance. Grace, the party doesn't start until 3. Why are you so early? I replied, I thought I could help with the preparations. We don't need any help. Danielle has everything under control. I observed Brenda, Michael's mother, hanging balloons in the living room as she had been invited to assist. I felt like an unwelcome guest in my own grandson's celebration. I can wait outside until 3, I mumbled, feeling humiliated. Don't be dramatic, Mom, Danielle said, appearing from the kitchen. You can stay, but don't enter the kitchen. You know you get confused with recipes. I, who had been the one cooking for that family for decades, was made to feel inadequate. That day, I sat in a corner of the patio, feeling like a stranger at my own grandson's party. I watched as Brenda assisted with the food, while other guests complimented her on the cake she had baked. I, who had contributed half the party's expenses, was completely overlooked. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, I remained in the background, unnoticed in the family photos. Later that evening, my grandson approached me while I was discreetly clearing dirty plates. Grandma, why were you so quiet today? He asked. I was just tired, my love, I responded, lying. Grandma, Brenda says you're too old for big parties. His words pierced my heart. Brenda, just 3 years my junior, was telling my grandchildren that I was too old. Despite that humiliation, I continued to support them financially, hoping for improvement. How naive I had been. I also recalled last Christmas, when I purchased extravagant gifts for everyone. A new bicycle for the eldest grandson, a tablet for the youngest, French perfume for Danielle, and a power tool for Michael, totaling nearly $3,000. On Christmas Eve, I arrived with my arms full of beautifully wrapped packages. The children rushed to me in excitement, but Danielle quickly called them over. Kids, put Grandma's presents under the tree with the others. We'll open them all together tomorrow. My gifts became lost among the mountain of packages they had purchased themselves. When it came time to open them, no one acknowledged who had given what. The children vaguely thanked everyone, but failed to mention my contributions. The most painful moment followed when I presented Danielle with a special gift, a pearl necklace that belonged to my grandmother, a valuable antique steeped in family history. Mom, it's really pretty, Danielle remarked without even trying it on. But you know, I don't wear much jewelry. Perhaps you should save it for when the grandkids are older. She returned the box to me without even opening the clasp to admire the pearls. I had envisioned that moment for months, imagining how my daughter would look wearing the same pearls that had adorned 3 generations of women in our family. That night, alone in my house, I wept, clutching the little pearl box. It wasn't the monetary value that hurt. It was the indifference towards something that came from my heart. The final straw occurred 2 months ago when I contracted the flu. I was bedridden for a week with a fever around 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I couldn't cook or even manage to get to the bathroom. I called Danielle, requesting something to eat or at least an inquiry about my well being. "Oh, Mom, we're quite busy right now. Michael has a significant project at work, and I'm on a double shift at the hospital. Can't you ask a neighbor?" I explained that I could barely walk. "Mom, you're not a little girl anymore. You have to learn to take care of yourself. We can't rush over every time you catch a cold." A cold? I was experiencing a high fever, yet she trivialized my condition. She hung up and did not check on me for the entire week. It was Mrs. Johnson, my 82-year-old neighbor, who brought me homemade soup and ensured I took my medication. A woman I barely knew showed more concern for me than my own daughter. When I eventually recovered and resumed my routine of visiting my family, no one asked how I had been. It was as if that dreadful week had never transpired. Now, as I sat with those bank documents before me, I comprehended with painful clarity my true role in my family's life. I was not the cherished grandmother. I was merely the emotional ATM. When they needed money, there was Grace. When they needed a free babysitter, there was Grace. When they sought a scapegoat for their frustrations, there was Grace. But when Grace needed love, care, respect, or even a simple phone call during an illness, she was non-existent. That night, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I retrieved my old laptop and logged into my online banking for the first time in months. I needed to make essential changes. First, I canceled the automatic $500 monthly transfer to Danielle's account. Second, I closed the joint savings account we had opened for family emergencies, which they exclusively used. Third, I revised my will. Everything I had intended for Danielle and Michael would now be allocated to a foundation for abandoned seniors. Lastly, I did something I never anticipated. I purchased a plane ticket. It was time to see the property in Nassau that I had inherited. It was time to begin the life I deserved. However, before I left, I wanted to ensure my family understood precisely what they had lost. On Tuesday morning, I executed my plan. Despite only sleeping for 3 hours, I felt completely awake and resolute for the first time in years. I donned my most elegant gray suit, the one I had bought for Danielle's university graduation but had barely worn. I meticulously applied my makeup and styled my hair in an elegant bun. I wished to present myself as the powerful woman I truly was, not as the needy elderly woman they believed me to be. My first stop was the bank. My financial advisor, Mr. Henderson, was surprised to see me so early. "Mrs. Grace, how may I assist you today?" he inquired. "I need to make several significant changes to my accounts," I stated firmly. Over the next 2 hours, I completely reorganized my finances. I canceled all automatic transfers to Danielle's accounts, closed the joint account we had established 3 years prior, and transferred funds from my investments into my main checking account. "Are you certain about these changes, ma'am?" Mr. Henderson asked, concern evident in his expression. "These are substantial moves." "Completely certain. It's my money, and I can do as I please." Next, I visited my lawyer's office, Mr. Franklin, who had managed my family's legal affairs for decades. "I need to completely revise my will," I announced without preamble. Mr. Franklin, an older man who had known me since Danielle was a child, removed his glasses and regarded me with concern. "Grace, is everything all right? This is a considerable change." "Everything is perfectly fine. For the first time in years, I see things with total clarity." I articulated my intentions. Everything I had allocated for Danielle and Michael would now be directed to a foundation for homeless seniors. I also established a trust for my grandchildren, which they could access only upon turning 25, contingent on maintaining genuine contact with me, not out of obligation. "Grace, don't you think you should consider this for a few more days? These decisions are irreversible." "I've had 74 years to contemplate this, Mr. Franklin, and the last 5 years have taught me everything I needed to know." I signed the documents with a steady hand, devoid of hesitation or doubt. My next destination was the travel agency. I had researched my property in Nassau all night. It was a 3-bedroom condo in a lovely neighborhood, rented for years by a management company, accumulating income in a Bahamian account I had never accessed. "I want to fly to Nassau this Friday," I informed the travel agent. "Is this a vacation, ma'am?" "No, it's a liberation trip." I purchased a first-class ticket. If I was going to embark on my new life, I would do so in style. But before I departed, I needed to compose letters. Upon returning home at noon, I sat at my desk, pulling out elegant letterhead I had purchased years ago but never utilized. It was time to clarify to my family precisely what had transpired. The first letter was addressed to Danielle. My dearest daughter, by the time you read this letter, I will be en route to Nassau, where I will reside in the property I inherited from my family, which you were unaware of. I have decided to terminate all financial support I have provided you over the past few years. The $500 monthly transfer you received has been permanently canceled. The joint account you utilized for emergencies has been closed. Do not perceive this as a punishment, but as a lesson in independence that I should have imparted long ago. For decades, I provided you with everything I had: my time, my finances, my energy, my unconditional love. At some point, however, you began to view me as a burden rather than a blessing. The Mother's Day card was merely the final straw. The issues began much earlier when you ceased to see me as your mother and started perceiving me as your personal maid and private bank. I have altered my will. My inheritance will now be bestowed upon individuals who genuinely appreciate generosity and familial love. Your children will have access to a trust when they reach 25, but only if they demonstrate the ability to maintain a genuine relationship with me. Do not seek me out for financial assistance. Do not call me to request my return, and do not send the grandchildren to emotionally manipulate me. If you truly wish to reclaim your mother, you must prove that you value me for who I am, not for what I can provide. Your mother, who has finally learned to value herself, Grace. The second letter was from Michael. Michael, I never regarded you merely as my son-in-law. I accepted you as the son I never had, yet you transformed me into the awkward mother-in-law you wished to discard. I overheard your phone conversation 3 months ago, where you discussed finding a suitable place to relocate me, as if I were old furniture obstructing your path. What you failed to realize is that a suitable place has always been within my grasp. I possess a property in Nassau, investments generating more income than you earn in a year, and the financial independence to live wherever and however I choose. For years, I quietly supported your comfortable lifestyle. I covered repairs, assisted with expenses, and addressed emergencies. I did so out of love, not obligation. Yet, you misconstrued my generosity as weakness, my availability as dependency, and my love as an annoyance. Now, you will need to stand on your own 2 feet. After completing the letters, I placed them in an envelope and left them on my coffee table, ready to be discovered. I then sat in my living room, smiling. It had taken me 74 years, but I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life. One teaches people how to treat them by what they are willing to accept. For decades, I accepted mere crumbs of love out of fear of solitude. Yet, it became evident that being alone was infinitely better than being surrounded by those who did not respect me. And now that I had come to this realization, I was not truly alone. I was free. I was going to Nassau, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of excitement about my life. Kindly subscribe my channel. See you in the next video with love and respect.